So today we are starting a new unit 4, and it is on the periodic table. So in your digital notebook, you need to make sure you change your name, put your name there, change the class block to whatever period you have this. Looking at the table of contents. So Friday, today hopefully, you will be going over the history of the periodic table and the organization of the periodic table. Monday, you will be going over periodic table trends and Lewis dot structures. You notice there's nothing on Tuesday. Here in school that day, they are doing a practice ACT, so we won't be doing anything in class, so you can use Tuesday to catch up. Make sure you have everything done that you need done. You will have a daily question that day, though, that you will need to answer. And then Wednesday, we will be doing electron configuration. Thursday will be our fourth lab, and it's called the Flame Lab. And then our test and notebook check for this unit will be Friday, 9/25. So for the history of the periodic table, your topic is periodic history. Your goal is I can list and explain the people who played a role in creating that periodic table. So first off, Lavoisier in the late 1700s started the modern-day periodic table, but he could only list 30 current elements. So you need to know Lavoisier. He's the one who started making the periodic tables, and he only could list 30 of them. Later, after electricity was introduced, this led to the discovery of many more. So what would electricity have to do with it? Well, a lot of instruments used to help identify elements run on electricity. So with electricity being there, that helped a lot. And then after the use of electricity by the 1870s, there were 70 known elements. So just with the introduction of electricity, they were able to over double how many elements were known. So a need for chemistry. After the Industrial Revolution, manufactured goods took off. With this came the mass production of petrochemicals, soaps, dyes, and fertilizers, as well as many other things. In order to make all that stuff, it became increasingly important to have a better understanding of chemistry. Understanding chemistry better meant better profit for manufacturers. So they needed chemists to know how to make their product cheaper, how to make their product better, what to make it out of. So with that, they needed to know what they were dealing with. So in the beginning of the periodic table, the push of chemical understanding led to a push for a periodic table to describe the chemicals being used, as well as their likely reactions or who they would react with. The electrons or reactions are caused by electrons that are found outside the nucleus of the atom. So that brings us to our second person, John Newlands. He found that there were some repetitions with all of the elements, that every so often they kind of behave the same. Well, that brings us to the law of octaves, which is where properties repeat themselves every 8 elements. So here's what Newland's periodic table looked like. It has similarities to the periodic table we know that looks like this, but there's a lot of differences too. Here, there's even more than one element in a box. It's just kind of a square. It doesn't have all the elements, but that was the start to the periodic table. So the flaw in that, the law didn't hold for every known element. The scientific community didn't like the word octave. And so at the time, there was a big fight between sciences and arts. Basically, he was right about it, but he was just off on the specifics of the periodic table. Which brings us to a crew called Mayer and Mendeleev. They worked together to create the modern-day periodic table. So they also found that if arranged in increasing atomic mass, they did have certain similarities. He did this and left columns or groups to represent their chemical behavior. In doing this, Mendeleev was able to leave room at the bottom and predict behavior of elements they didn't even know about. Henry Moseley. He is the one who examined Mayer and Mendelev's table and realized there were some errors with the elements and some were switched with where they should have been. So he rearranged the periodic table and used the atomic number instead of the atomic mass to create the modern day periodic table. So if you look at the periodic table, you'll notice sometimes the mass doesn't always go up, that it switches, but the atomic number will always go up. So that's why they use the atomic number and not the atomic mass. So for this section, you need to answer these two questions in your digital notebook on the history of the periodic table. Why do they want to make a periodic table? And pick one person that we talked about who played a role and explain why you think they were important.